Thinking about other guys who are rising, and not necessarily here, we're not talking about lottery or necessarily even the first round, but what comes to mind is 6'9", kind of a unicorn of sorts athletically, and he comes from DePaul. You're talking about a 7'2" wingspan, 9'1" and a half standing reach, and that's Paul Reed. Average double-double this past year for DePaul. Super athletic, certainly has to work on the shooting side, but what do you make of the way that he's been able to build up his stock?
I actually am disappointed that he isn't higher on boards. I mean, when I do the analysis on him, he's a really intriguing prospect because he can guard four positions on the floor, first of all. And there's very few players in any draft that you can say about that. And while I don't think he's a polished offensive player, I don't think he's a bad offensive player either. He certainly has a nice touch around the basket. There's a little bit of a mid-range game to his game. He's shown some ability to stretch the floor, though that's an area I think that he's going to have to continue to improve on. I think that when you put those together, right, Reed is kind of an ideal NBA big man right now. Again, versatility is the name of the game. And I just think that you look at that production at DePaul, and when you look at the analytics, by the way, the analytics really, really shine for what he's done at DePaul. And I think, again, maybe coming a little bit from a smaller school, some people are going to knock him and say, offensively, I'm not sure that he's really the guy. But, a guy that he's been compared to a lot, Precious Achiuwa out of Memphis, who is also one of these versatile defenders, maybe can guard. Precious might be able to guard all five positions on the floor. I actually think that he is a much better prospect offensively than Precious is. And so if someone takes him in the 20s, I think it's actually a steal in this draft. He may slide into the second round. There's a lot of crowding that's going on right now, kind of on that first round bubble. So if he slid into the 30s, that wouldn't shock me. But whoever drafts him, I think Paul Reed's going to be in the league for a really long time because he's going to be able to hang his hat on defense. And again, that ability to guard multiple positions is a very, very coveted thing in the league.
Chad, did you always think that he would be this type of guy, like even back in March and April when you thought about him? Or maybe how have things changed because he's risen up a lot of different boards?
John Hollinger of The Athletic and former front office guy for the Grizzlies was really the guy who turned me on to Reed. He early on told me, you got to watch this guy. And, John has really pioneered analytics in the NBA in many ways. And his first thing is, okay, his analytics pop. Now, the next thing is you go watch the tape and see, okay, does he pop there? And, contrary to popular opinion, you don't just take the analytics and you don't just take the eye test, right? You try to combine those together and see what's there. And so the interesting thing for me, because I didn't hear him high on a lot of boards, was I bet when I start watching the film, I'm not going to see it, right? Because that happens with people. And that just wasn't the case. As I watched Reed play, I'm like, oh man, I see a lot of things that could translate to the NBA level. He's got a good length. He's a good athlete, right? He's got a good motor. He's playing hard. And, all of that I think means that, look, at the end of the day, he might not have come from the prestigious program. He might not have been the highest ranked player out of high school, but he can play basketball. He's got the body. He's got the abilities, I think. I think this is going to be the sleeper guy, especially out of the Big East. If you're talking about out of the Big East, for sure. But frankly, in the draft in general, if there was two guys that are going in the 20s, 30s that I'd say, I'll bet that they're in the league in 10 years, which most of these guys, frankly, sadly will not be, I would bet on Paul Reed.